In my school, there was a very strange classmate, and his story made a big impact on me. That day, on my way home from school, I saw a bunch of thugs bullying another student. I was curious and wanted to get up close and check it out, but my friend thought such things should not be interfered with, and the person being bullied was the weird friend I wanted to talk about. His name was Faye, and the reason he got bullied was that he was very special. Luckily at the time an adult came and stopped them, or else Faye would have been beaten up. The bullies ran away and left Faye behind. The adult man picked him up and asked him if he was okay. His hair and eyebrows were white. His eyes also weren't black. When we were kids, we thought Faye was a monster. We didn't know what albinism was. Then Faye quietly left. I never heard him complain to anyone, and he didn't have any friends. A few days later, I saw him being bullied again in the alley near the school. This time, it seemed different from the previous bully, so I sneaked a peek. The bully was very angry. He forced Faye to take back his words. Faye must have said something to anger them. But no matter how much he was beaten, Faye still insisted that he saw a ghost walking behind the bully's back. And everyone in the school knew a deadly rumor about Faye. If he saw a shadow following someone, that person would die in a few days. And that happened so many times. What he saw was true, so everyone was afraid of him. The bully was very scared and took out his anger on Faye. He wanted Faye to take back his words. But Faye definitely refused, because what he saw was the truth. Then the kids who went with the bully were afraid that he would kill Faye, so they stopped him. That was probably the last time I saw Faye, and the scary thing happened not long after that. The student who bullied Faye drowned and died while swimming in the river. His family came to school making a fuss, and Faye also dropped out of school and disappeared from there. Later, when I grew up and everyone had their own lives, I heard that Faye had become a magician. That day my girlfriend was sitting in a room to work because she was a screenwriter. She often worked at home. Suddenly she saw something falling outside the window, looking like a shadow. It fell in front of the window, making a very loud noise. She rushed over to open the window to see what happened outside. As soon as she opened the door, my girlfriend saw a hand raised. The scene that followed made her very frightened. A man died outside the window. Maybe he fell from above and hit our clothes drying pole. My girlfriend was very frightened. She called me back immediately and also called the police. After investigating, police said that the dead man lived upstairs and slipped while trying to reach out to clean the window. I thought everything had been resolved well and it had nothing to do with us. The police had already handled it, so we didn't care anymore. That night, my girlfriend was still working on the computer. She continued to see a shadow falling outside the window. It was still the same sound as in the morning, and now my girlfriend was very scared, so she did not dare to open the door anymore. She started to step backwards. Suddenly, outside the window, a man's shadow appeared and stood outside, while this was the 4th floor. She was so scared that her legs were stiff that she couldn't move anymore. The man slowly pulled the door and looked inside. Suddenly, a distorted face with a head tilted to the side as if it was almost broken appeared at the window. He started to stretch and crawled into the house from the window. His body was twisted so scarily. At that time, my girlfriend collapsed on the floor, unable to stand. He finally crawled into the house through the window. His body was like broken bones. Little by little, he crawled closer to my girlfriend. Then he tried to grab her pants as if he wanted to drag her along. Too scared and trying to resist, my girlfriend tried her best to get up to run as fast as possible out. She told me about the strange man. At that time, I advised her to stay calm and take me to see what happened. Listening to her tell and looking at her panicky actions, I was nervous too. I opened the room door and started peeking a little bit inside the room. At this point, I was a little more relieved because the room was empty. There was no man like what she said. I began to reassure her. Maybe she was just working and writing too much so that the story or incident haunted her. Maybe she imagined it. But with a panicked expression, she claimed to have seen the dead man in the afternoon. Then I went over to close the window so I could look around outside to see if there was anything. After that, I comforted her. "You must be so obsessed that you looked at it wrong. No one was here at all." However, she insisted that she had seen a ghost. There was no mistake. Seeing that, I both wanted to reassure my lover and at the same time I wanted to find out if it was a ghost or not. I called a friend to ask how to contact Faye and called Faye to my house. Not long after, there was a knock on the door. Faye must have come. He was quick because I just called him about 20 minutes ago. I walked out and opened the door. It was Faye. It had been a long time since I had seen him. He had changed a lot. He looked stronger and more mature, but his special thing was that the skin and hair still were all white. After a few greetings, Faye also asked straight to the point. "Was there a ghost in your house? Let me have a look." I happily invited him inside and introduced my lover. After that, she told Faye the story she encountered herself. Just by looking at it, Faye guessed that she had just encountered something scary because according to Faye, her expression right now was quite bad. Seeing that, I quickly replied that she said she saw a ghost, but I couldn't see it, so I didn't believe it. Hearing that, Faye immediately looked around the house and said that something had intruded here. I still bewilderedly asked what it was, because I couldn't feel or see anything. Just listening to the two of them, Faye's expression suddenly turned serious. "That person had targeted your girlfriend. Be careful." At this time, my girlfriend turned to blame me because I did not believe her. Both of them said the same thing, which made me a little embarrassed. And so I came up with a stupid idea that only when I saw it, then I believed there was such a thing in the world. Faye gave me a strange smile and asked me if I was sure I wanted to see it. He would make me content. With a girlfriend by my side, I took a risk and asked Faye to prove what he said. Right now he didn't talk much, just smiled and rummaged through his bag to find something. Quickly, Faye found a small bag that he said was the powder of raw glutinous rice, which could help me see what I wanted to see. After that, Faye went to the door and started smearing the powder all over the window glass. Then he continued to spread the powder all over the floor. That thing finally appeared. That scared me and I couldn't believe my eyes. From the glass door to the floor, full of handprints and footprints like that of a crawling person, just like what my girlfriend told me about. I panicked and asked Faye what to do now and wondered why I couldn't see. Faye calmly replied, "That ghost appeared and scared your lover because she was the last person to see him die." And according to Faye, even when I couldn't see it, it was always there, next to or around me, which worried me a bit. Then Faye took out from his pocket a copper coin tied with a red string and said I should let my girlfriend wear it for a few days. Everything would be fine. I offered to pay Faye to thank him, but he had no intention of taking my money. Seeing that, I sent him downstairs and asked him if he had been doing this all these years. Faye said this was his mission, and doing this made him happy. We continued to talk to each other. Faye changed a lot. He always had a smile on his face that looked very ghostly. Faye said, "I was born with some special ability. My teacher discovered this ability of mine and directed me to stick with it." I continued to go with him further because I wanted to talk to him a bit more, but Faye stopped me. He said that if I needed him, I should just call. We said goodbye to each other, but later on, it was true that there were many things I needed his help for. Today myself and my colleague Wang went out drinking together. He rarely invited me out before, so there was definitely something that required my assistance. "Hey you, have something to say?" There was no need to be so polite. Wang began to inquire about me because he heard that I had a special friend who can see and deal with things related to ghosts. When I heard his question, I immediately thought of Faye and speculated that Wang was experiencing spiritual difficulties. He sadly stated that from childhood to adulthood, he always felt he was followed by someone, and the incident had a significant impact on his life now. From a young age, he was able to easily overcome dangers or accidents in an unusual way, and he sensed that there was a woman who always helped him. When he was about 6 years old, he used to go with the children in the village to collect bird eggs from tall trees. When Wang climbed to the nest in the tree, he was overjoyed because he noticed a large number of bird eggs in the nest. Unfortunately, Wang slipped just as he was about to climb down. He fell from a great height, and it was very easy to break a leg or an arm in such a fall. Wang expected to hit the ground hard, but even after all of the eggs had fallen to the ground and broken, Wang still didn't. In a blur, he saw a woman supporting him. After landing, Wang realized that if it hadn't been for the woman's assistance, he would have fallen and hit his head on the rock next to him. In another time, Wang and the children in the village continued to go to the stream to catch fish. The water was moving so fast that he couldn't keep his balance and fell. The water was so fast that Wang was swept into the deep water. His body was weak, so he couldn't do anything but sink. Just when he was about to suffocate from the water, he felt someone touch his back from behind. The hand slowly brought him to the surface, and the person was attempting to save him. He tried to look but couldn't see her face clearly, but he definitely believed that it was the woman from the day before. She was always following and helping him, and then he lived happily and peacefully until he grew up. Things got worse when he had a lover. One day he took his lover home to watch a movie. He had to say goodbye to a few people before, so he hoped it would be well in the time. But as soon as his lover walked into the bathroom, Wang heard his lover scream. He rushed over to the scene and saw her standing in the toilet while covering her face with her hands and her body trembling. He quickly inquired and she panicked and stated that she had seen a ghost in the mirror who was looking at her with an angry expression. She kept pointing her finger at the mirror and saying that they were ghosts, but when he looked at the mirror, he didn't see anything. He took her out and reassured her that it could be because she was overworked or because she was dizzy. However, she didn't stay calm for long. In the night before going to bed, she went to the toilet to wash her face, and then the ghost woman reappeared. She was standing right next to Wang's lover, making her so scared. With a scary, ferocious face and menacing eyes, as if she didn't want anyone to touch her belongings. Because the lover was too scared, she ended her relationship with Wang as well. Soon after, he met another girl, but in the time he didn't want to be involved, so he took the initiative to discuss marriage. One night, While the two of them were sleeping together, something strange occurred. Something suddenly grabbed her ankle and yanked her hard. She was dragged out of bed and immediately fell to the ground, causing her to scream in fear. Wang also awoke unexpectedly and quickly went to her side to see what had happened. She had bruises all over her leg, as if someone had gripped her leg, and the incident occurred a few more times. It made her scared. So she also ended her relationship with Wang. Many strange things caused him to get a headache, and he was perplexed. So he knew I had a special friend and asked me for help. After hearing what Wang said, I was also shocked, and looking at his emaciated appearance, I also felt sorry for him. So I contacted and made an appointment with Faye. On the night Faye and I arrived at the meeting point on time, Wang was already waiting for us at the gate. I introduced Faye to Wang and told him that he was a talented magician. I don't like people calling me teacher or magician. Just call me by my first name, Faye said. On the way up to Wang's house, Faye began to inquire about his childhood, whether he had been sick or had nearly died. He also answered honestly to Faye's questions, saying that when he was 5 years old, he had a serious illness and nearly died. But according to Wang, he was only severely ill for a short period of time, after which he was nearly cured and was now in good health. When Faye heard Wang's statement, he gave a mysterious smile as if he already knew something. When I saw Faye's expression, I knew he had seen something. So I was curious and asked him about it. But he didn't say anything. He just said that he needed to get to Wang's house right away and check it out before making a final decision. Because I was scared after hearing Wang's story, Faye was the first to open the door and enter the house. Looking around the house, Faye said that there was another person living here with Wang. I bewilderedly said that I didn't see anyone. Why did he know that there were other people? Faye looked at me, still with a smile on his face. He asked if I wanted to see the ghost. I didn't dare to respond, but my curiosity wouldn't let me go, so I nodded quietly to Faye. He was rummaging through something in the bag which he always carried with him, and both Wang and I were watching Faye intently. Then he started sprinkling a strange white powder all over the place, and the powder quickly spread and filled the room. It tasted like pepper powder and got into my nose, causing me to sneeze several times. As soon as I opened my eyes, I saw a strange scene. Right now, the room in front of my eyes was filled with strange black smoke. It extended from the desk chair to the floor. I panicked and asked Faye. He said that it was the yin left behind by the ghost. There was a ghost in this house. Wang was worried now, and he kept pleading with Faye for assistance. He couldn't continue to live with the strange things. Faye said, I would help you, but you have to tell me the truth. This ghost following you is not natural. With Faye's interrogation, Wang almost didn't understand anything. He said that he didn't know what happened. Since he was a child, he felt someone followed him and protected him. Besides, he didn't know what else. Faye also seemed to understand the problem after hearing Wang's story. He believed that because Wang's mother died too early, she couldn't tell him everything. Faye said, Have you asked your family anything, or if anyone knew about this when you were 5 years old? Then Wang hurriedly took out his phone and called his grandmother. I was curious, how did Faye know that Wang's mother passed away early? Faye said that because his parents died early and Wang was inherently weak in both body and soul, the family must have found someone to protect him. Wang immediately came to tell us after having a call that something happened in the year he was seriously ill. Wang's grandmother said that because of his weak body and serious illness, his mother worried about her child, and she let him marry a ghost girl so that she could follow and protect Wang. Faye said, "You had to marry the ghost because she already considered herself your wife." I felt a bit disgruntled after hearing Faye's statement, because at the time Wang was too young to decide. The adults in the family did it, and now he had to suffer. Could he not have a wife for the rest of his life? Faye stated that it was acceptable for Wang to marry anyone, but he had to first marry her and obtain her consent before marrying another wife. Wang appeared concerned. He wished to remove her from his life, but Faye was on the side of the ghost wife. Faye said that she had followed him all his life. Now he wanted to chase her away. Wang finally decided to marry the ghost wife and asked Faye to assist him with the wedding ceremony. Then Faye chose a date to celebrate the wedding, and in the night, Wang would stick happy words on the bedroom window, but in a white color. Then he would put a mirror next to the bed, lighted 2 white candles on both sides. As long as he could see her next to him, everything would be successful. Wang was a bit scared at first, but by midnight there was still no movement, so he fell asleep. After a while, he felt the surrounding air was cold, so he awoke dreamily. He panicked as soon as he opened his eyes and looked in the mirror. There was a woman lying next to him, and she had to be his ghost wife. He gently and quietly tilted his head back to look. He wanted to see how her appearance was, who had lived with him for such a long time. When he turned around, the bed was completely empty, with no one beside him. However, when he looked back in the mirror, he could clearly see that she was standing right beside him. He gradually became less afraid and looked at her closely. She was very similar to whom he saw when he was a child, and he felt he accepted her from his own heart. Then he fell asleep. A year later, it appeared that the ghost wife agreed to let him marry someone else, and Faye and I were both invited to the wedding. He had gotten used to his life with the ghost wife and living in harmony with her, so his face was no longer as gloomy as it once was. I felt thankful to Faye, since Wang could now live a normal and happy life. And I also didn't forget to joke that Wang was lucky to have both wives. Faye said, "So, did you want a ghost wife? I would make you satisfied." When I heard Faye's statement, I immediately showed fear and refused. But I couldn't stand always having to make a place for the invisible person in my life. And I also felt bothered to have a girlfriend, let alone a ghost wife. The day was fun, so I drank quite a lot. I admired Faye's talent and wanted to work with him again. Faye said, "It's better you forget that idea. I have a lot of contact with yin people, so I won't live long. If you followed me, you would meet the same fate." But I still thought it was too good to be able to help people while earning money. But Faye still firmly disagreed, so we walked home together. After all, I had a better understanding of Faye's life and the world in which he lived. The news about Faye was spreading faster and faster, and there was no one in my company who hadn't heard about it. The following story is about a female colleague of mine. I also made an appointment with Faye to go there and assist my colleague because she was very nice to me in the company. As my admiration for Faye grew, I began speaking to him respectfully. But he didn't like it, so I decided to reduce it as well. And along the way, I briefly discussed the situation of the colleague who needed help. Her name was Yang, and what happened to her son, who had been dazed recently and forgot everything like a lost soul. "Did she try taking him to the hospital?" Faye asked. I informed him that she had attempted to take him to the hospital, but no results so far. When we arrived, I began knocking on the door. She too had heard about Faye through word of mouth. Miss Yang quickly opened the door and welcomed us happily. She then invited us into her home to rest for a while. However, Faye quickly got to the point. He wanted to see the boy, so he asked Yang to call him. Miss Yang turned around as soon as she heard Faye say that and summoned her son. The boy then slowly opened his room door, his face lifeless, his eyes black and his features haggard. He also walked slowly, looked tired, and didn't appear to be an active 10-year-old boy at all. I glanced over at Faye to see what he was up to. Faye was staring at the boy with his pale iris's eyes right away. Finally, Faye believed that the boy had lost his soul due to fear of something. "Please call the boy over. I want to see his hands," said Faye. Yang was extremely cooperative with us. She motioned the boy to come closer and extended his hand to Faye. Faye rubbed the boy's middle finger a few times. He then asked Yang to recall anything that had recently scared the boy. There'd been so much going on lately that she couldn't remember it all. After thinking for a while, she suddenly remembered that while she and his son were passing through an alley, a dog rushed out, causing both of them to panic. Faye smiled, stood up, and said goodbye to Miss Yang after hearing that. Before leaving, Faye told Miss Yang that he would call her back by 12 o'clock tonight, and that Miss Yang should then open all the doors and call out her son's name. We quickly left after saying goodbye to Miss Yang. I was so excited that I asked Faye what to do next. Faye wanted to visit the alley where the vicious dog terrorized Miss Yang and her son. Following Miss Yang's direction, we found the alley. Sure enough, there was a stray dog inside rummaging through the trash for food, and when it saw us, it bolted. I followed Faye down the dark and cold alley. I looked around nervously, afraid that something would happen by accident. The atmosphere here was quite creepy. There were numerous amounts of ashes on the ground and moldy cakes. Suddenly a breeze appeared out of nowhere, blowing those ash piles into the air. They flew over me, causing me to shiver all over. I dashed up to Faye and exclaimed, "It's so dark and scary in here." Faye laughed and teased me, saying that I was overthinking because nothing out of the ordinary was happening here. I hesitantly asked Faye what to do now. With a devilish grin on his face, Faye said, "Enough watching this. Come back tonight." He then left me to my business and suggested to meet each other tonight in front of the supermarket. I took the day off from work because I had nowhere to go, so I sat at the cafe waiting for him. On time, Faye was standing in front of the supermarket, a smile on his face. I was nervous, but I also wanted to go down that alley, so I pleaded with him to hurry up. But when he said he needed to go to the supermarket to get some sweets, I assumed he was hungry. When I came out, my hand was carrying 2 heavy bags containing various types of food and even cigarettes. Because I was curious, I asked him what he planned to do with all of the stuff. "These are items for the evil spirits that roam around in this area," Faye stated. Hearing Faye's response made me feel a lot more nervous. Curiosity piqued my interest, and I expressed my desire to see them as well, to see how they look like. Faye began rummaging through the bag for something. Faye seems to be able to make me see them even though I thought there was no way. Then Faye took out a small jar containing a blue liquid and placed a few drops on his hand. He then applied it to my eyelids and the center of my forehead. This was a method of opening the eyes of yin and yang, which could assist ordinary people in seeing ghosts. Faye began to teach me some things, such as not talking to them, not trying to touch them, and simply spreading candy while walking. As we progressed deeper into the alley, the cold night air made the space here feel even colder. I did as Faye instructed, scattering the contents of the bag across the ground. As the air started to be colder and colder, I gradually spread the majority of the candy. However, I hadn't experienced anything out of the ordinary as of yet. Suddenly, I heard the sound of snack chewing coming from behind me, which made my heart skip a beat. I couldn't help but return my gaze. Suddenly, a swarm of people appeared behind me, causing me to panic. They were crawling on the ground, picking up the food I had just scattered. The scene was terrifying. Upon closer inspection, they appeared to be hungry ghosts devouring cakes and candies on the ground. Some other ghosts were smoking and chatting with one another. I was so terrified that I turned my face away, refusing to look at them. As I turned around, I almost collided with a man, so I quickly apologized to him. But then I realized that I could easily go through his body. Then he turned to face me, flashing a hideous smile with his head turned upside down. I suddenly remembered what Faye had told me earlier about not talking to these ghosts. But it was too late. He had already rushed over to catch me. At that precise moment, a hand from behind swung rice grains at him. It made him fearful and howl in agony. He bolted and I nearly peed my pants, but I assured Faye that I was fine. When Faye saw that I was fine, he instructed me to call Miss Yan, tell her to open the door and call her son back. At this point, the boy's spirit was sitting on the ground eating cake, so I hurriedly called her to do what Faye instructed. After a few minutes, the boy's spirit appeared to have heard his mother's call and began to stop eating and raise his face. The boy stood up and was about to leave when he was stopped by the ghosts surrounding him. Faye immediately grabbed another handful of rice and splashed it all over them, while scolding that he had fed them full already. These ghosts appeared to be afraid of rice and Faye, so they withdrew. As Faye stood guard, the boy's soul gradually emerged from the alley. Just to be sure, Faye and I escorted him home. We also went home after work done. On the way, I wondered what Faye had ended up putting on my eyes. I was surprised by the answer because that thing was bull steers. I was curious how bull steers could help us see ghosts. Faye appeared to be bored with my silly questions, so he was the first to leave. But I still wondered, how could he get the bull's tears? Before returning home, Faye told me to take a bath with grapefruit leaves because the encounter with the man's spirit today could cause me to be infected with yin. But because I couldn't find grapefruit leaves, I didn't take a bath, which caused my body to ache for a week. Truth is that it's not wise to mess with the devil.